We're online. Okay, welcome to the Senate Minerals Committee. We have 4 bills that are we want to get through today so we can get them to the floor. So I want everybody to be brief on your comments so that we can get through these 4 bills. That means the public and the senators. So let's go with the roll call, please.
Senator Cooper.
Here.
Senator Jones. Here. Senator Nethercott.
Excuse.
Senator Rothfuss.
Here.
Chairman Anderson.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
All right, we have a quorum. Let's jump right into this then. We have rules, and if you violate them, we'll kick you out. Okay, all right, everybody's got that? Yeah. All right. Okay, Senate File 21, Wyoming Stable Token Amendments. Do we have somebody to present it? Senator Rothman?
Mr. Chairman, I'll start it up. I'll invite Director Apollo up as well to provide a little bit of context. But Mr. Chairman, this is the product of the Blockchain Select Committee during the interim. You'll recall we passed the Wyoming Stable Token Act last year. This is a set of amendments that were brought by the Stable Token Commission to help provide some additional clarity, as well as to provide a little bit of additional flexibility. On page 2, we add some language that provides a little bit of additional flexibility in how the treasuries are invested in repurchase agreements. So where we're investing the dollars that are backing the Wyoming Stable Token, and it also provides the capacity to accept grants, contributions, et cetera, which was necessary for deposition. The second thing that this does on page 3 is it restructures on 3 and then on to 4, but you'll see the amendment is going to provide a little bit of additional clarity in how we do it. The language around how funds that are received are administered. There's an administrative account. There are costs associated with the operation of the commission and the stable token. The way that we had it drafted in the original draft provided that you had to fill what is now being called the liquidity account prior to the administration costs. We need that to be reversed so that we can use revenue prior to filling the liquidity account. So that is one of the effects of this. And it still has the 102% concept, but it just changes that to a new account. Those are the primary changes in the bill, and then some numbering. And then we have a little bit more that I'll bring up in the amendment. You all have a copy of the proposed amendment. So I'm actually going to jump to the amendment now because it kind of becomes the bill as we work through it. It's updated language that we worked on since we passed it through the select committee. Looking at the amendment now on lines 18 through 21, we're adding clarity that the commission can enter into agreements with other states and coordinate with other entities that they have that authority. They probably already have it, but we're being explicit about it. And then the bottom of page 1 and onto page 2 is just a clearer way to call out that liquidity account so that the 0 through 100% reserve is what's called the trust account. That's a dollar for dollar match. Then we have from 100% to 102%, what we call the liquidity account. It already exists in statute. It's just unclear how it works. So we're providing clarity, and this calls it out much more explicitly through the Romanet 2 there. And then you see the D paragraph on page 2, line 25, is the creation of that liquidity account and the description of what it's for and what it does. And then the E paragraph here that we see in the amendment is just moving an earlier paragraph or an earlier sentence from page 2 and calling it out explicitly that the commission may accept contributions, grants, gifts, transfers, bequests, et cetera, into any of the accounts. And then those would then be bound by the rules and laws associated with those accounts. So the final change in the amendment is that this needs to be effective immediately because we actually have need for a lot of this language to be in effect probably a month or two ago, but we'll do our best and get it done as soon as we can get it done, Mr. Chairman. That's the bill. And Mr. Chairman, I defer to Director Apollo to see if there's anything there that I'm missing as we try and hurry through this bill.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Anthony Apollo, Executive Director of the Wyoming Stable Token Commission. Thank you for having me this afternoon. I will just be brief in my comments. I know there is a lot we're trying to get through this afternoon. Just want to contextualize a few of the changes that are being presented in the bill itself. The first one, as the good senator mentioned, is on page 2, line 15. This is a reference to 17 CFR. That's the Code of Financial Regulations, Part 270.2A7, also known as a 2A7 fund. Essentially, what this does is still preserves our very conservative basket of permitted investments that back the token, are still interest bearing. But this specific fund type comes the regulatory wrapper under the SEC. So we wanted to have the option to avail ourselves of that structure, because if you look at other stablecoin issuers in the US that have that, including Circle, that's considered kind of best in class. So we wanted to have that option if that was helpful to the commission and probably incentivize a little bit more consumer confidence. The next piece on page 2, again, lines 16 through 19, around our commission's ability to accept federal grants or other donations, gifts. This is something that we anticipate as a result of the current administration support of digital assets. It is likely that federal funding for programs like this may become available in the coming years. We don't know quite yet because this is the first digital asset state agency in the US. But there are also potential here to work with other blockchain foundations that are nonprofits to help support the agency without creating a taxpayer burden for that.
The amendment deletes all that. Page 2, lines 16 through 18, delete entirely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you are correct on that, I was looking at the bill. If we look at the amendments to the bill, the new subsection E on page 2 of the amendment, lines 41 through 46, just moves that language. It's the same language, just in a different place.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Moving forward with the rest of the amendments pertaining to what we call the cascade, essentially when the interest income begins to get generated on the reserves backing the stable token, those dollars come back to the state. Right now, there's a little bit of uncertainty as to how that flow of funds works. What the amendments here do is clarify that flow of funds. What this bill does is the same as what the budget bill has intended to do, which is allow the agency to recognize that interest income first so that we could pay down our obligations to the state and become somewhat autonomous without having to get more taxpayer funding or general funding along the way before we perform the over-collateralization of the token. And that last piece I'll mention on that is effectuated through what we call the liquidity fund account. In statute, we have a trust account where it proposes to have both the one-to-one backing of the stable token and also the over-collateralization. The difficulty with that is the rights of the token holder with that one-to-one backing have different redemption rights than that over-collateralization piece, which is certainly the commission's funding. We're parking it somewhere as a risk mitigation tool, but that is essentially the state's funding. So we want to be very specific in that split of trust account is for the benefit of token holders, those users holding a Wyoming stable token. Over collateralization is in the liquidity fund account. So again, that is just for clarity and for good hygiene on the legalese that backs the token. And again, I know we're on a tight timeline, so I will leave my comments there, but Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Mr. Pollock? Questions? Any questions? Hearing none, thank you. So we've been properly presented. Is there any public comment on the bill or the amendment? Bill or the amendment?
Thank you, Mr.
Wait.
Chairman. My name is David Pope, P-O-P-E. I'm a certified public accountant, a chartered global management accountant, and I serve as both the governor, one of the governor's liaisons to the Select Committee on Blockchain, as well as I am one of the commissioners on the Stable Token Commission. Brief comment, I am in favor of both the amendments and the bill in itself, and I will stand for questions or sit for questions as is necessary.
Questions for Mr. Pope? Questions for Mr. Pope? Hearing none, thank you, Mr. Pope. Next.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Scott Meyer on behalf of the Wyoming Bankers Association. I had just gotten this amendment and went through it, but as I look through it, we don't have any objection to this bill.
Oh, good.
Stand for any questions.
Questions for Mr. Meyer? Hearing none, thank you. Other comments from the room? Other comments from the room? Hearing none. No comments from Zoom. So we'll close out public comment. Committee, what's your pleasure?
Where's the bill?
Second.
Moved and seconded. We need to move on the amendment also.
Second on the amendment. Okay.
Moved and
Senator
seconded on
Jones
the
has got it.
amendment.
Yep.
Any discussion on the amendment? Any discussion on the amendment? Hearing none. All in favor of the amendment, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. That amendment passes. Back to the bill. Any other discussion on the bill? Other discussion on the bill? Hearing none. Sue, would you run roll call, please?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call vote for Senate File 21 as amended. Senator Cooper,
Aye.
Senator Jones. Aye. Senator Nethercott,
Excuse.
Senator Rothfuss,
Aye.
Chairman Anderson.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, you have 4 ayes, 1 excused.
You squeaked by that one, Rothfuss.
Got that one.
Got that one squeaked by. Okay, next bill to come before us is Senate File 22, unincorporated nonprofit associations amendments.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this again was from the Select Committee on Blockchain. I've got a couple of folks that I'll call up in a moment to speak to this. This looks long. It actually isn't really that long. It's just that there's a word change that occurs like 37 times or something. So looking through this, remember, again, we were the first state to create the decentralized unincorporated nonprofit association called a DUNA. D-U-N-A is what we call it. And this is our first round of amendments to that based on feedback after the first year of operation. And we'll hear a little bit about the successes of that first year of operation shortly. These are largely cleanup amendments. We don't have any substantial policy changes in this bill, but working back through it, you see on page 2, a couple of simple changes that have some significant meaning of changing merely to solely. There was some discussion about improving it that way. On to page 4, we see a concept that is going to recur throughout this bill, which is being explicit about decentralized unincorporated nonprofit association instead of using nonprofit association, because nonprofit associations are separate in law. So we wanted to ensure that we were being clear in our language and that there'd be no confusion. So again, you see those changes on page 5. On page 6, we add a definition of distributed ledger protocol in this draft, just for clarification. Again, it's not changing anything, but it's providing some clarity. We use it elsewhere. Page 7 is conforming language. Page 8, conforming language. Page 9, conforming language. 10, conforming language. 11, conforming language. 12, conforming language. I like this trend. 13, conforming language. 14, 15, conforming language. On to 16, we do strike a provision about another organizational statute, and the organization meets the statutory requirements of the organization. That was deemed unnecessary, and it's basically just having that if you fall short you'll automatically become an unincorporated nonprofit association unless the governing principles otherwise specify that was deemed sufficient. You either have a default position or you have governing principles that specify otherwise. So that's just a little bit of a cleanup. Same thing, some cleanup language at the bottom of page 16. 17 is conforming language. On to 18. We're striking language or other property that confers upon a person a voting right within the nonprofit association regarding the member interest or any right thereunder is freely transferable to another person through conveyance of the membership interest. We decided that we wanted the limitation and we wanted to eliminate the language about conferring upon a person a voting right. It was ambiguous, and in striking it, we basically end up providing a little bit of additional clarity. On page 19, decentralized and incorporated again. So conforming on 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Well, on 25, we actually add or federal law because we have as required by state law, other than this chapter requiring assets, et cetera, we needed the or federal law. Again, that's just a cleanup insertion, not really changing the intent. 26 is conforming. 27 is conforming. We add a definition of charitable purpose, which is used elsewhere to provide clarity under statute of how that conforms with federal tax code. 28 is conforming language. 29 is conforming language. And then the act becomes effective. So you can see, Mr. Chairman, it's a long bill that really doesn't significantly change the policy, but was brought about by a working group that we have that took feedback from early DUNA users and brought them through this bill. So that's the bill. I know we have a couple of folks that can provide a little bit more context as well as how things are going with DUNAs in the state of Wyoming. So I invited Mr. Kerr and Mr. Kaufman to join and answer any questions in addition. And they might have some brief statements. Come on up.
Come on up, even though we weren't officially brought up.
Do you want to officially bring them up?
No,
Okay.
no.
You can make it official. All right.
Go ahead, you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Matt Kaufman. I'm an attorney with Hathaway & Coons here in Cheyenne. I'm also one of the governor-appointed liaisons to the Select Committee and part of the working group on this bill. Mr. Chairman, I'll keep my comments super brief. Obviously, in support of the bill, along with Mr. Kerr here, one of the people that's been working quite a bit on these DUNAs since we enacted this. I'll be the first to say, even though I've worked a lot in the blockchain and crypto space since Wyoming's gotten into this, I myself was very surprised at the reception of the DUNA bill. It's been a very, very popular mechanism. I think it has filled a need that was existing that we didn't even fully realize until this bill was stood up. So want to applaud the efforts of our legislature for getting this passed, and I do think we're seeing some success. As Senator Rothfuss said already, in my mind, the vast majority of this is just cleanup. Things that after having a little bit of time to work through the statute, work with parties that are using this brand new entity type, there's just some very minor things. Honestly, and I'm sure Mr. Kerr here will have much more intelligent things to say. From my perspective, one of the most important things that this bill draft does is we specify more succinctly who can be an administrator of these DUNAs. So just to orient you really quickly, under this context, because these entities are unincorporated by definition, right? There doesn't have to be a filing with the Secretary of State to trigger it. And these entities have been around for a long time. The Unincorporated Nonprofit Association has existed in statute since, I don't even know when. 1993. 1993, thank you. So what we've learned is that through the decentralized component of this, we have this concept of the administrator. And there was varying interpretations on whether or not that administrator had to be a member of this entity, or could it be a third party that was engaged to provide those services. That clarity has now been put into this draft, and we think that clarification is incredibly important. following up from Senator Rothfuss, a number of just conforming amendments around, definitional structures, cleanups from things that were slightly inconsistent with the prior act. That's really all it does. Nothing overly substantive, but I think it's a good bill. The subcommittee worked on this. I think there's general consensus from the community about this, and stand in support. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Kaufman? Questions? No questions from Senator Jones, that's for sure. Yeah. All right, thank you. And you, sir.
Thank you, Senator. I'm David Kerr. I'm the CEO of Cowrie. It's the advisory service that provides instruction on tax compliance, U.S. Domestic structuring, and then also we operate Aduna Administrative Services, where we actually step in, prepare the financials, prepare the tax returns, do the outbound information reporting for tax that keeps the DUNAs extraordinarily compliant in a way that's very demonstrable. If you go to the websites of the existing DUNAs, they have financials that the members can see that you could go see. And they have the system for how we do the tax reporting. And so one of the concerns I think with the DUNA was that, oh my gosh, what's the compliance risk going to be for this blockchain entity that does all of these things? And I think we've proven the concept behind how we planned on doing the financial statements, keeping it very responsible, keeping it very transparent. And we brought in some very large projects so far. And there's quite a few more on the way. Demand keeps growing. And I think the expectation is there's a lot of federal work around what's called the Clarity Act, the Market Structure Act. And the Market Structure Act in the drafts that exist so far point to the DUNA as the form of decentralized governance they would expect to see for the security stream, which would be amazing for the Wyoming DUNA because it would port through. Then the other, I think the enormity of the changes, part of the reason they were so important. Alabama and West Virginia are both considering DUNAs this term, and so we are trying to keep consistent. We're trying to keep Wyoming leading the way on it. And so to the degree we could make substantive changes, even if they were kind of persnickety at times, it made sense to keep driving the way forward by having the best draft, the best version, the first one. And so I think part of the completeness of the amendment exercise was simply with that in mind.
All right, questions for Mr. Kern? Questions for Mr. Kern? Yes, Senator Roth.
Thank you. Mr. Kerr, will you provide a little more background on the large projects? Because I do think it's important to kind of let the committee understand the scope of what we're talking about and what's happened since we started this.
So the way that these projects are constructed, the members have a say over a store of assets that they can kind of control and utilize in furtherance the efforts of the protocol they represent, the blockchain protocol that they're associated with. And so one of the largest projects in this space, Uniswap, with a treasury of around $2 billion itself, came over. We've been working with the IRS on the prior year taxes. We've been getting all of that taken care of. And so they became a DUNA. So one of the largest projects in the space, a significant amount of money, is now inside the US. And so inside of kind of the push for digital assets from the White House to become the US crypto capital of the world, digital asset capital of the world, that's a banner project for what that looks like. It brought it inside the US tax reporting scheme. It brought it inside the US laws. And the Wyoming DUNA was the vehicle that allowed that to happen. And so that vote passed hundreds of millions with no opposition. It was a universal acceptance from the community. It was an incredibly meaningful vote in the sense that that's what they wanted. And it did require paying some prior year taxes at a level that is probably higher than most projects would, because they had some expenses in those prior years that wouldn't have been expenses for tax. And so there was a little bit larger of a tax bill, but they don't have to worry about it anymore. It's taken care of. The bills are paid, and they can sleep at night. The ambiguity of what they were is gone. They are a Wyoming DUNA. And it was a really big win for the space and a big win for, what the White House agenda on that subject is.
Senator Rothfuss.
So, yeah, I think that's indicative. And there are other projects that are not quite as large as Uniswap, but that's a $2 billion project that was interested in our Duna architecture and immediately signed up and basically domesticated those assets, brought them into the US financial system. And I think that was a big win for Wyoming. Wanted to make sure that it's clear that we've already made a giant splash with our Duna law.
Anything else for Mr. Kern? Anything else? Anything else? Hearing none, thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Anyone else? Anyone else in the room? And no one in Zoom? That'll conclude public comment. Committee, what's your pleasure?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Any
Mr. Chairman.
discussion on the Duna?
I'll just note that I do actually have a couple of possible amendments. I'm not going to bring them today based on the fact that we've got other work to do. So I might bring those to the floor, but again, some tweaks and improvements based on what we've seen in other states since we passed this bill during interim, but
Are they
we'll
small?
work on that later. They're not small enough to worry about right now. So we'll get to them later if we get to them.
Okay,
It all depends on how the floor ends up going.
all
So
right.
with that, I think the bill's in great shape. If it passes exactly as it is, it's still a great, I think, win for the legislation.
All right, so let's do a roll call vote, please.
Senator Cooper,
Aye.
Senator Jones,
Excuse,
Senator Nethercutt,
excuse.
Senator Rothfuss.
Aye.
Chairman Anderson.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, you have 3 ayes, 2 excused.
That bill passes 30 pages worth of Duna. Rothfuss can present that. All right, next bill to come before this committee is Senate File 54, State Banks and SPDI conversions. And is there anybody to present that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That'll be me again. Mr. Chairman, this also was the work of the Blockchain Select Committee, but because of a prohibition in our enabling statute that precludes us from sponsoring legislation related to Title 13, we have it as an individual bill. That'll be the same case for the next bill that we take a look at. Mr. Chairman, this bill is relatively straightforward in what it does, even though it's several pages long. We worked extensively with the banking commissioner and the Division of Banking to get this right. And all it does is allow a banking entity, a state chartered bank that is chartered as a speedy bank, a special purpose depository institution. Again, this is one of the things that we created back in 2019 as a specific type of chartered bank in the state of Wyoming, allow it to transition or convert from one type of financial institution to another. And then the same for a state chartered bank that isn't a speedy bank to convert into becoming a speedy bank. We have these types of conversion statutes in many other areas, allowing for trust conversions and bank conversions. So those statutes are already on the books, but we did not have any conversion statutes in and out of speedy banks. At this point in time, I don't believe we have any direct interest of anyone to convert out of being a speedy bank, to my understanding. But we want to make sure that we just covering all of our bases. This was some work we did in the last interim to ensure that that flexibility was available. It was work that needed to get done. And I don't, see anything contentious about how we did it. We follow a pretty conservative path working through the banking commission, consistent with how we do it for other banking conversions. So that's the bill. I'm not going to walk you through the individual provisions of it. The statute is modeled after existing statute that's been around for other banking conversions for many years. So I'll pause there. And I think we have
I have
the
a question.
commissioner online, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, but go ahead.
I have a question, Mr. Senator. It's state banks and speedy conversions. Is that just for state banks? It's not for national banks? Is that?
Mr. Chairman, we are, yes, it is only for state banks, I think is the short answer. I think you probably could go through a series of conversions to go from a national bank to a state chartered bank. I'm pretty sure that we've done that in recent years. We can ask the commissioner. And then you could go from a state chartered bank to a speedy. Maybe you could make that in one step. That would be a potential question for the commissioner. But converting, you would have to become a state chartered bank in that process. And I guess the reverse would also be true. If you started off as a speedy bank, there's probably a mechanism that would allow you to become a nationally chartered bank. I am not sure, and Mr. Myers here also, he could probably tell us the history, if we've had many state chartered banks that rechartered as a nationally chartered bank. It's probably happened, and I think we have statute that would allow for that. But all of these are complex mechanisms that are plausible.
Okay, thank you. And we have a banking representative.
Mr. Chairman, the commissioner
Doctors?
is online. I don't think he can be
Yeah,
here today,
There's
so,
nobody in.
let's
In the room?
let's bring the commissioner next. I mean, he's here to testify on this. He just couldn't be here in person. Our banking commissioner, Jeremiah Bishop.
Let's go ahead and bring him on, Sue. There you are, Jeremiah.
Good afternoon. Quick mic check. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great, thank you. And thank you for allowing me to testify remotely. I'm at a conference with other state regulators, so I appreciate you allowing remote testimony on this and the next bill. No, I won't. I'll keep my comments pretty brief on this one, as it was worked during the interim, as Senator Rothfuss said. This just outlines a conversion path for the SPDI to convert to a traditional bank. There are certain things that a SPDI is prohibited from doing that state banks can do, such as lending, things like that. And this follows basically the same path as if it was a new bank charter. It still goes to the state banking board as if it was a new charter. They may, in their discretion, have the commissioner approve or not approve it. It's at their discretion, or they can go through the same process as if it was a de novo application. And the same is true for the reverse if it's a state bank wanting to convert to an SPDI. So it's the same process. They would be treated the exact same way as if it was a new entity converting one way or the other. To answer one of the questions I heard come up was, does this apply to maybe an SPDI converting to a national bank or a national bank converting to an SPDI? I believe Senator Rothfuss answered that exactly correctly. We have an existing statute, a way for a national bank to convert to a traditional state bank. So they would have to do that first and then use this conversion language to convert to an SPDI, or they could just simultaneously create a new SPDI if they wanted to, and then dissolve the national bank. There is existing rails for those to go that way if they choose to. Going the other way, if we wanted an SPDI to convert to a national bank, that would be under federal law. There's nothing really in our statutes for them to follow for that. They would have to go basically apply for a national bank charter. And since that's a national charter, that's under federal law. So there's really nothing we could do to make that simpler, easier, or affect it in any way. Once they went through that, they would basically dissolve the SPDI or have the new de novo national bank basically just acquire the SPDI. And again, that would all be following national bank rules and regulations at the federal level. But with that, this one, it's pretty straightforward. I mostly just wanted to see if there's any other questions that I could answer on this one.
I have a question. Can I be a state bank and an SPDI, or do I have to choose?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Mr. Chairman, you, if you wanted to be a state traditional bank that is, a community bank, they're lending, they have FDIC insurance. If you wanted to also have a speedy charter, that would have to be a separate entity. Now, currently, a state bank can conduct, I think, all the activity in an SPDI can, but it does not go the other way. There are certain prohibitions on the SPDI charter. So SPDI can't do everything a state bank can. So if you really wanted to have both, yes, you would be able to have both. You would just have to have two entities formed, one chartered, each chartered under each one, and then it may be under the same holding company. But yes, that would be allowed.
Okay, thank you. Other questions for the commissioner? Other questions? Hearing none, thank you. And you're going to testify on the next bill also?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that's correct. I'll stay on.
Okay, all right. All right, there are no more from the room, no more from Zoom. We'll close public comment.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
we didn't open public comment to the room yet.
Oh.
Mr. Meyer wants.
Oh, we didn't. Oh, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Scott Meyer on behalf of the Wyoming Bankers Association. We don't have any objection to this bill. For the life of me, we can't figure out why a state charter bank would want to convert to a speedy because they can do everything else that they do it, but the law is fine with us and we don't have any objection. Stand for any questions.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Meyer? Any questions? Hearing none, thank you. Anyone else in the room? I'm sorry. No one else in the room want to testify? We'll close public comment. Committee, what's your pleasure?
Here's the bill.
Moved and
Second.
seconded. Any discussion? Any discussion? Any changes? Do you want to go through it page by page?
No.
Absolutely. That'd be
Well,
fun.
we're not.
That'd be fun.
Okay. Let's do a roll call on this baby.
Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call vote for Senate File 54. Senator Cooper,
Aye.
Senator Jones,
Excused.
Senator Nethercutt,
Aye.
Senator Rothfuss,
Aye.
Chairman Anderson.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, you have 4 ayes and 1 excused.
Well, you squeaked by another one, Rothfuss. Okay. We'll move right on to our 4th bill of the day. Wow. Way to go, team. SP 55, Special Purpose Depository Institution Amendments. And I'm assuming, Rothfuss, you're going to present this one to us?
Yeah.
All right.
I'll do this one too. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Senate File 55, again, this was the product of the interim for the Blockchain Select Committee. As I mentioned, we can't sponsor in Title 13, so it's individually sponsored. This is a set of amendments that if I'm not mistaken, I think they were all requested by the Division of Banking as we worked through some ideas. We've had speedy banks in existence since, I think, 2020. We passed the law in 2019. Maybe it was 2021 when the first was chartered. So we're still working on ways to optimize the performance and behavior. And so this bill just goes into statute, makes a few corrections, and I'll run through those corrections really quickly or improvements. On page 2, we give jurisdiction to the Chancery Court for speedy bank decisions and appeals related to the banking commissioner pursuant to 13-12-117. That was just a decision that we made through the committee to try and appropriately start with the Chancery Court on these types of decisions. On page 3, there'll be quite a bit of material here that gets at how the banking commissioner shepherds a new speedy charter into operation and commencing of business. And so there's changes related to that we'll see over the next few pages. And that was based on some struggles with providing a certificate of authority and then not having a bank commence operation in a reasonable amount of time. And the banking commissioner didn't really have the tools to work through that. So we just restructured some language. It's largely cleanup, but it's substantive in that it changes the commissioner's responsibilities and the tools he has to work with a speedy bank that is starting up. So you see we're changing some language here on page 3. We start with be chartered and we change to commence business and we say shall commence business. On line 3, page 3, line 15, we do have a substantive change where we're providing that for an SPDI to commence business, it must have, starting on line 12, a paid up surplus fund of not less than 20% of its legally authorized capital stock and undivided profits in an amount not less than it was 3 years of estimated operating expenses. This changes it to 1 year, which is consistent with traditional state chartered banks. So we had overdone it previously at 3 years. And now we're just taking that back to how it is for a traditional bank. There was deemed to be no reason to have that excess, and it causes problems for the startup of some of the speedy charters. On to page 4. That's conforming language, again, about the commencement of business and 1 year of operation. We add a paragraph on page 4, this new B paragraph, that the commissioner shall have the authority to determine the requirements by rule in accordance with this act that shall be met for an approved speedy to commence business. And this gets into the problem that we have in existing law, where the commissioner would like the ability to kind of lay out a pathway, a checklist of do this, do this, do this, and do this, and then you would be ready to commence business. It's unclear in statute right now, so this is just explicitly giving the commissioner the ability by rule to do so. Bottom of page 4 onto page 5 is conformance with this concept of adhering to those rules and commencing business operations. On to page 5, you see that we've got decisions by the board, adding new language on line 15, that issuance or denial of a certificate of authority to operate compliance with the requirements for an approved special purpose depository institution to commence business under statute, or the issuance of a denial or extension. So this gets back to the idea now of commencing business in addition to a certificate of authority. And then you see on lines 22 and 23 reference that if those decisions are being appealed, it can be to the Chancery Court directly, or should be to the Chancery Court directly. Page 6, conforming language, but adding a little bit of language you see on line 20 about supervisory fees, because the last thing this bill does on line 7, page 7, line 10, we add a new C paragraph to create and deposit a Speedy Bank resolution fund account. And so we have resolution funds for traditional state chartered banks, and it's the idea that if there is a need to wind up a bank that is in financial crisis, that there be an account available, kind of like an insurance account effectively, that will provide funds to the state banking commissioner to unwind that institution. And this just creates and provides some details on how that account would operate. So this exists already for traditional state chartered banks. We didn't have it in statute for speedy banks. The commissioner asked to add it into statute so that we would have a similar mechanism. It'll take several years before the depository fees end up building up in there, but it's good insurance in case there's a bank failure in the future. And that's the bill. Again, all suggestions by the banking commissioner to improve based on experience with our early speedy banks. And I'll stop there. And again, Mr. Chairman, if there's any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them, but I'd like to start with the banking commissioner once again. These are largely his requests.
I have one question on page 4. The line 6 through 8 makes it sound like they can have a plan to raise the capital required, but they're not required to have that raised yet. Is that correct? They can just have a plan?
Mr. Chairman, that's on the application. And yes, so as you're moving forward the application, you can have a plan at that point of time, but you're going to need to raise the capital to move through the process. You will not be able to operate, obviously, until you have sufficient capitalization. So the plan is at the planning stage, and it was actually probably inappropriate that you'd have to raise the capital prior to submitting the application. And the way the commissioner tends to work, he wants the applications to come in early so that a lot of the details can be worked out ahead of time and everybody can be on the same page without any surprises. And so that was a request to ensure that they didn't have to raise all of the capital prior to submitting, and then the communication would suffer.
Thank you. Thank you. Should we call on the commissioner again?
Bring in the commissioner.
Sure.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will start with just a little bit of a background on kind of how we currently operate, and then what this does to fix the issues. And this will relate to the question you just asked. That was one of the issues that was coming up. So first, how we are currently operating with these SPDI banks is a company comes in, they get with an application, we review them, they go in front of the banking board. The banking board, let's say they approve their charter. Once that charter is approved, they cannot commence business until we give them this certificate of authority or COA. The current statute is very limited on what we should be looking at for that COA. It's very limited to just, I think, the bylaws, directors and officers, and their address. As a regulator, I want them to open in a safe and sound manner from day one. So we send them a requirement letter with items such as raising capital, developing policies and procedures, building out their core banking system, and anything that's specific to their business model. They then must put all that together, make the application for the COA to us. If we're satisfied, we give them a COA and they can commence business. Currently, there is no deadline for when that application for a COA must be made after getting the charter, and this has led to some pretty significant delays. And one of the issues is raising capital. There were several instances in existing statute where it talks about when should capital be paid in or subscribed to, and it was actually very inconsistent and contradicted itself in several places, just like Mr. Chairman, you identified. And so this bill makes it very clear from the beginning, you don't have to pay in capital until you commence business. Because currently investors are hesitant to invest their capital with an SPDI unless they have a COA, but we can't give them the COA unless they have the capital. So there's a catch-22 here, and that's one of the items that this bill fixes, is it just makes it clear on this process from getting the charter to opening. And so if this bill passes, what will happen is they get the charter, the application will only include a capital raising plan. Again, we're not asking them to actually raise the capital at this point. Just what's your plan to raise the capital that would be required? Once the charter is approved, our COA application will be very simple. It will be their bylaws, directors and officers, and their address. And then in rule, we'll take our existing letter, put most of that into rule, and then we'll issue them a letter for anything specific to their business plan. So if that happens, they'll know exactly what the rules are, what they'll need to do to commence business. Then this bill also puts on a deadline of 1 year. Once they get that COA, they have 1 year to commence business in compliance with those rules we set out. If they fail to do so, their charter is forfeit. But this bill does also put in place an extension to the banking board. If something outside of their control comes up within that 1 year, they can go to the banking board, explain the reason for why they're not open yet. If the banking board is satisfied, they may grant an extension. There's no limit on the extension. And then they have more time. Or if the banking board feels like they should have had this in place, they can agree that, okay, the charter is forfeit. And then this bill then allows both of those decisions to be appealable to the Chancery Court. Anything I do, anything the banking board does, largely affects these entities. So it is important to have that appeal process in there. And then some of the other items this bill addresses, again, this is some of what Senator Roth has already addressed. It changes the initial capital from 3 years expenses to 1 year expenses. Like Senator Roth has said, that is just to make it consistent with traditional banks. That's the same. However, we still do have the option of as determined by the commissioner. So the commissioner does have the option to increase or decrease capital based on the risk profile of that particular bank. It then also establishes that resolution fund. This is something we have for trust companies. So if a traditional bank fails, they have FDIC insurance. So rather than the Division of Banking resolving that company, we turn it over to the FDIC. An SPDI is not required to have FDIC insurance, but the FDIC is not involved. So if a SPDI were to fail, the division would have to cover the cost of that wind down. And they could potentially be significant depending on the circumstances. So we have a pledge in place where the company must pledge certain assets to us to help cover these costs. But if we were to expend that pledge amount, we are on the hook for paying that. We're an other fund agency. We have no general fund money. So this is just a savings account so that we can start building it up to cover those costs. Hopefully we never use it, but I would rather have the savings account rather than having to go ask for general fund money to cover the cost of resolving one of these failed institutions. And the language is the exact same as what we have for trust companies. Another item this bill does is I think it's section 2 at the very end, is it does make a repeal. This is a contingency account, so SPDIs are required to have 100% of all deposits backed by high quality liquid assets. So if they have $100 in deposits, they have $100 in cash or short-term treasuries. However, after they've been operating for 3 years, that goes up to 102%. I think when this was first introduced as part of the original SPDI bill in 2019, my understanding was this was kind of a belt and suspenders approach. We want to make sure these are very safe institutions. However, now that some of these companies have actually been operating and we can see this in practice, the operational problems and complexities that this adds far outweighs the safety that it provides. It creates quite a bit of accounting issues for the SBIs to account for this. It creates some uncertainty for customers because they're likely going to be the ones funding this. And at the end of the day, that extra 2% is not adding that much safety, and it's going to cost both customers and the banks more money than really what it's worth. So that's why we recommended this repeal. With that was a lot, but happy to answer any questions on how this works or what any of this changes.
Well, Mr. Commissioner, you mentioned 1 year. If the Speedy group had not formed, they could go and get a extension.
Mhm.
That isn't in this bill. That's something separate.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, so that's already in place. They can already get that. I think all this does is I think it changes it from 6 months to 12 months. I believe all it does. That's existing in statute already. This is on page, it looks like top of page 5.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, it just changes that. The current one is 6 months. We're changing it to 12 months because again, 6 months is not a very long time to raise money and open a bank. So we're changing that to 12 months and still keeping the extension from the banking board.
Okay. Other questions for the commissioner? Other questions for the commissioner? Hearing none. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Good luck with your other meeting.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. They're everywhere. They're everywhere.
Do you feel safe?
Go ahead, Matt.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Matt Kaufman. Again, I'm a partner with Hathaway and Coons here in Cheyenne. We have worked with a number of the SBDIs that have gone through this process. And I'm also a governor appointee to the select committee and part of the working group that worked this in the interim session. We met with every one of the SBDIs on this. Obviously in support of it, I just wanted to provide a little bit of additional context. I think, Mr. Chairman, your question was astute because the statute kind of, I don't want to say sloppily, but it kind of loosely defined the process originally with respect to the chartering process and then commencing business. And so what we've run into as we've gone through a number of these applications is we recognize chartering is the process where you go through the contested case proceeding you have a hearing before the state banking board and you are either granted or not granted a charter. That's one process, right? Which results in a potential charter. After that, then the Division of Banking has its own rules and processes that an SBDI or institution has to fulfill before you get your certificate of authority, as the commissioner just said. As Senator Rothfuss was explaining accurately, we've had a huge problem with these applications because a lot of people have read this language to mean if you have to have 30 or 50 or however many $1 million to capitalize one of these banks, it's just not feasible to have that money as part of the chartering process, right? Having that be a condition of commencing operations and getting your certificate of authority is completely reasonable. So a lot of it is just clarifying the distinction of what you have to have for the chartering process versus what you have to have in place before you're authorized to commence business. As Senator Rothfuss and the commissioner both said, it's really not rolling back those requirements. It's just delineating between what you have to have and when. And yes, part of that, as an example, is a plan in place to raise that capital, and you've got to execute it pretty quickly. You got to get it done within a year and capitalize the bank to proceed. So that's one really important piece of this. The other important piece, Mr. Chairman, is just giving the Division of Banking the flexibility they need to define those requirements in the certificate of authority and to delineate, whatever rules and processes there are going to be to follow. That's a really important piece of this because obviously these institutions work really closely with the Division of Banking. They've done an incredible job of processing these applications and working these SBDIs through the process, but granting them a little bit of additional discretion and authority to promulgate rules and evaluate the certificate of authority requirements is also really important. And then lastly, I don't want it to be missed, but what Commissioner Bishop testified to with respect to that 2% contingency account is incredibly important. And I just want the committee to recognize that. Obviously, other states are chasing us, and there's been a lot of other legislation proposed. Under President Trump's guidance, the OCC is working to get federal charters. This is becoming a much more competitive landscape. And that 2%, as Commissioner Bishop testified, doesn't really do anything at this point in time, but it's creating really big operational problems. And obviously, the larger an institution is and the larger they scale, the bigger that 2% problem becomes. It's already 100% reserved, right? And it's required to be 100% reserved. Having that additional capital it's just producing really weird operational results that I don't think anybody anticipated when we first passed this legislation. So those are kind of the three highlights I just wanted to bring before the committee and obviously in support of the bill. Thank you.
Questions? Questions for Matt? Yes, Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Matt, it's my understanding this program, along with other programs we've stood up here, have been extremely successful. Can you tell me how many PD banks we have set up or are in the process of setting up right now?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the question. Currently, there's 5 chartered SBDIs. We just chartered the most recent one this last year in March. And so, I said March, the final, was it October? We started the process in March. I think the actual charter came later. But yeah, there's 5 currently. Obviously, attorney-client privilege. I can't tell you the names of others, but there are many others, currently evaluating and looking to begin the process.
And excuse me, Mr.
Go
Chairman.
ahead.
Matt, just as a general number, I don't need it exactly, but roughly what kind of capitalization on those 5 banks?
Mr. Chairman, every SBDI I'm aware of was so there's again the application in which the SBDI puts forth what they propose for their business plan and for their capital. And then there's 3 that have actually completed the certificate of authority process and gone all the way through. I'm not aware of one of the chartered SBDIs commencing business with less than 30 or 35 million in total capital. And I think a few of them much higher than that.
One more follow-up.
Yep, you go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Matt, is it fair to say this is a $1 billion or multi-billion-dollar business in the making right now?
Mr. Chairman, again, completely speculating, but yes, I think what we're seeing is the intent of this bill was to drive, a brand new financial institution that could meet needs without FDIC insurance requirement. Obviously, I don't think anybody anticipated at the time quite how big of a problem the FDIC was going to pose. or the prior presidential administration, just with respect to how these institutions get access to the Federal Reserve rails and all those kinds of things. But what we've seen, at least in my humble opinion, is the institutions that are pursuing this are not only incredibly well organized, but they're incredibly well capitalized and structured with very narrow and very specific either use of blockchain or very specific market segments. Speaking about the most recent SPDI that was chartered, very novel approach to instantaneous settlement banking, right? That can't currently really be done within a traditional bank. What I'm personally excited about, Mr. Chairman, is that what we're seeing is these institutions are doing what we thought, which is they're not coming to compete with our community banks here in Wyoming. They're coming to create brand new products and services that we can regulate here in Wyoming using the legislation that you all have set up. But they're bringing that capital and they're bringing those jobs and they're bringing all of that to Wyoming. So do I think it's $1 billion industry? I think it's much bigger than that, Mr. Chairman. And I think over time we're going to see it grow much more than that.
Yes, Senator Rothfuss.
And just to address Senator Cooper's point, so Kraken, which is currently our largest speedy bank, has over $5 billion of digital assets under their custody. And I mean, that's public information. I don't know what the exact number is, but it's over $5 billion. That's obviously substantial. So we're already well into the billions, and that's just one of our entities where they're at right now. And one of the great successes, which Senator Lummis disclosed the other day, and this just recently took place, we have been fighting with the Federal Reserve for quite a long time about whether our speedy banks would have access to the Federal Reserve and the rails there, which has been very important. And there's been ongoing litigation taking place, but just recently, like probably within the last week or two, Kraken was finally granted access to the Federal Reserve, and that will then be enabling for many of the other entities that Mr. Coppin was mentioning. They were waiting on that to happen, right? That was just a key tool that we were expecting to be there, that it's taken 7 years for that to actually happen, but it just happened last week. So we were already successful, and now that unlocks, I think, further success where we had entities that were looking at it, but since that had not been unlocked yet, really hadn't pursued it.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just add one comment to that I think it would be great for you all to hear, and that is, obviously I get to be a part of all kinds of conversations with, Wall Street law firms and Washington, D.C. lobbyists and people that are kicking the tires on the Wyoming SPDI. And one of the things that we are hearing time and time again as of late is the fact that a lot of the industry doesn't trust the federal charters. And the reason they don't trust the federal charters is because policy shifts, right? And we've seen those policy shifts from administration to administration, which has dramatically impacted the process and the availability of those charters. What we keep hearing from people is we love that Wyoming has committed to this and they're sticking to this and they keep iterating and improving this and it's not going away. And that consistency is paying dividends. It really, truly is attracting people. We've heard that more times than I can count.
Good, thank you. Other questions?
One more
Yep.
follow-up.
Yep, Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So for whichever you may want to answer, how does this figure into the state's GDP? Or is it included in the state's GDP yet, or?
Mr. Chairman, I'm way out of my element on that one.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yes, it's a good question as to what the actual impact is. But if we look at the state GDP, they break it down by industry code, and we can look at the financial industry code. I think we can even subdivide it down to financial technology sector and see what the GDP impact is. I haven't looked in probably the last year or so to see where that's at and see how that's been growing. But when I looked 2-ish years ago, it was clearly on an upturn. So I could sense we were making progress at that point in time. We've done a lot with trusts as well, right? It's not just fees. We've got trusts, we've got banking, we've got a lot of different financial entities that are all engaging in this space that would all contribute towards that. And yeah, very positive.
Follow up? Follow up, none. I have a question. We mentioned in here a couple times Chancery Court. Is that the only place that these issues could go through? It could go through any other court too, couldn't it?
We don't want to.
You answer that question, because that is largely you and others working on.
So the answer is no, we don't want it to. We want them to go to the Chancery Court. I mean, the reason why we created the Chancery Court was to create a national, if not international, court for the resolution of these type of highly sophisticated and novel disputes that may come out concerning speeding and other financial technology related disputes, right? So we want to force them as much as we can into the Chancery Court in order to build that body of case law concerning these disputes. And so that's a very intentional decision to have that be the court of jurisdiction to handle these matters. And it will pay off in dividends. It'll have an exponential effect and impact. Because again, not only do we provide the statutory regulatory consistency, then the case law will as well. So they know how these statutes are being litigated and being interpreted with those facts. And so it just adds more of the bulk, the totality of the industry here in Wyoming.
And
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, the only thing I would add to that, the two considerations that the working group specifically considered on Chancery Court was, one, obviously the jurisdiction of the Chancery Court extends to things like Senator Nethercott just testified to, their business and corporate matters, which are generally the subject matter of these applications anyways. You know, there's a specific set of criteria that SBDIs have to meet, probably already falls within the purview of the SBDI. But secondly, when it comes to an appeal, the Chancery Court is lightning fast. And if an applicant is putting together $50 million for purposes of an application and there is a necessary appeal, we liked the speed of that process. We think that that's frankly a benefit that no other state can offer right now. And so a really big benefit.
Plus it makes all the Cheyenne lawyers come to Casper.
Buy lunch. Yeah, it's good for the economy.
Yeah. Helps our GDP. Other questions? Other questions for Matt? No, hearing none. Thank you. Thank you, Matt. Anyone else from the room? Anyone else from the room? We don't have anybody else from Zoom. We'll close public comment. Committee, what's your pleasure?
Move the bill.
Move the bill. Seconded by Jones?
Everyone's here.
The two non-attendees? Uh-huh. Okay.
Clear that we were here.
Any,
at the finale.
That's right.
any discussion, any changes? Hey, I would like to know why SPDI isn't throughout this bill. On every other bill, you've got it every few sentences. But on this bill, must have been written by somebody else. They didn't SPDI anything.
Do you want to amend it one at a
No,
time?
no, I like it.
Okay.
Page by page.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll just leave it then.
Okay, no other discussion? No other discussion? Let's have a roll call then.
Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call vote for Senate File 55. Senator Cooper,
Aye.
Senator Jones, Senator Nethercott,
Aye.
Senator Rothfuss.
Aye.
Chairman Anderson.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, you have 5 ayes.
All right, you squeaked by another one, Rothfuss. And you're going to present that one too. You got 4 bills to present. 4 for 4.
Did we get?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's all we have, and I think that's maybe all we have for this year. Is that correct?
Till the house came.
Well, yeah, we'll have the House.
I don't know if they're going to pass any bills.
Yeah. They can't get through one.
Might be done.
I think that's it. So anyway, we probably won't meet on Friday, Sue?
House Bill 5, if you want to. That's up to you, Mr. Chairman.
Nope. No house bills.
No,
Actually,
no, I don't want any House bills.
We have to start working some of ours first.
Yeah. So we probably won't meet on Friday noon. You
you
can-
can next week.
go to lunch. Yeah, Monday of next week, probably. Okay.
Kick back and go on.